Everybody has been having a great Resi conference as we kind of get into the last couple of sessions before the wind down of today's event. And what we're going to be talking about this afternoon is tech hubs in the New York, New Jersey area and what we have been doing to really grow and develop this overall entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm Judith Sheft. I work at the New Jersey Innovation Institute at NJIT, and I'll let each of the other panelists introduce themselves in a minute. And I'm involved with really helping drive the innovation ecosystem around the northern New Jersey area specifically, but then it spreads out more broadly to really include the rest of the state of New Jersey. We all have a couple of slides that we'd like to share a little bit of to give you a framework to think about innovation ecosystems. When we think about entrepreneurship, initially you might tend to think of that sort of lone, independent investor working in his or her garage slash basement slash Starbucks slash Panera to develop things. But what we know is that by coming together and really leveraging the resources from the overall ecosystem, these entrepreneurs are going to be able to succeed faster, or in some instances, fail faster, pivot and move on to the next thing. So we'd like on this panel to spend some time talking about what are the resources available in the various tech hubs in the New York and New Jersey area, as well as talk about how are things a little bit different from what you might have thought about in the past. So this particular slide shows some of the elements of the innovation ecosystem, and it starts on the far left with global corporations. And again, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, global corporations kind of did it all. You had the big companies, whether it was Bell Labs, AT&T in the telecommunications area, Merck, Johnson & Johnson, the large corporates in the pharmaceutical area, they kind of did it all from soup to nuts. But over the years, as these corporations have downsized and really put into themselves kind of a focus on their key strategic activity, there's other elements of what they do that they need to now go out and get from the rest of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems, because they've kind of downsized their whole R&D efforts and activities. So then you've got the small companies and startups who are looking to try to get into these larger corporate entities. They want to work with them as strategic partners. They want to be able to, perhaps in the healthcare space with large hospitals, be able to do beta trials and so forth. There was a session I was at this morning that was talking about hospital systems and how small companies can get access to them. And sometimes it can seem like a really tall wall between the large corporates and the smaller entrepreneurs. And so we're going to talk about how the tech hubs are able to help make that a better interaction. Universities have a lot to play in the innovation ecosystem. Universities can be the source of some of the very early stage technology that's being developed, but yet it's probably too early for a large corporate to initially want to get access to that technology, so they're going to want to work with the small companies who will be able to kind of advance it further along through the valley of death. Then you've got the investors who are looking, perhaps many of you sitting in the audience are investors who are looking for that early stage technology, want to be able to participate with the startup companies and their engagements, and government funding as well. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, we were all going to show a little bit of the ecosystem that we had. This is a map that's showing the ecosystem of New Jersey, and it shows that we've got a bunch of cell and gene therapy activity going on in the northern part of the state. We've got smart city, tech, medical device, health, IT, kind of in the center part of the state. Biopharmaceuticals tend to be, again, center part of the state. You might have, if you were at the presentation that Kathleen Coviello was on, you might have heard talk about the hub in New Brunswick, which is a new area that the government, state of New Jersey, has got some focus on around life sciences. Rutgers University, New Brunswick, area, we've got aviation and some other areas in the southern part of the state. But even though the state kind of thinks this is their strategic plan for where there's tech hubs, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the entrepreneurs are like reading that playbook. The same way your infant child didn't read the playbook that said they're supposed to sleep for 8 hours a day. Entrepreneurs don't always read and agree with government plans that say this is how we need to be organized and here's where the main focuses of attention are going to be. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dan Conley, who I've known for a long period of time, who is one of the big supporters of life sciences entrepreneurial activity in the state of New Jersey. Dan.
Thanks, Judith. So let me just get this straight. Is this a 1 minute each introduction, and then we come back to 5, or this is my 5?
This is 2 your 5 now.
Okay. So I see Lindsay's slide up here. He's the expert who can speak to this, so we're going to have a special guest starring in for me. For that, what I'm going to do is give my 1 minute. Okay, so people ask, what is Entrepreneurs University? So you have a card, 10 programs a year for now 34 years in continuous operation. So I've been doing it for 26. We used to just have one company. It was like the MIT Enterprise Forum. And that's who started it, some MIT gentleman in '84. When I came along in '92, I said, wow, let me help. And so we grew it to an all-day program. We're now 6 or 8 companies, and they don't have to schlep to us, but it's worth the trip. They can call it in. So what do we teach? Well, we teach every topic on the cards or on the flyer to every entrepreneur, and their job is to ask. I don't know about that. I haven't heard about this. Can you share this with da, 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 da. So they're looking for help in the deconstruction and reconstruction of their business plan. When they gain the most, they become, inventors. They become engineers and executives and the like. And they become entrepreneurs. It's a big step. It's a mindset. Everyone knows about it. Everyone has their own definitions. Then there's a CEO. Becoming a CEO is another whole series of steps. I got to not just know the science, but the securities behind how people are going to get their money in and their money out. And then the big leap, which we've had a number of companies, CEOs come through and achieve, is fundability. In other words, an entrepreneur who knows what he's doing versus a CEO who's fundable and he owns what he's doing and it works. And we have a bunch of those. So for those entrepreneurs who say, well, what can you teach me so I can get ready to become fundable? The most important one book for that is The Startup Checklist by David Rose. He also wrote the book Angel Investing, which gives the checklist about what the entrepreneur is going to have for the angel. So if the entrepreneurs read these books, they can get way up on the curve they need to know. So what every angel investor wants you to know is by Brian Cohen here in New York City, co-founded the New York's Angels. Another really excellent book, and the genesis behind Resi, and brilliant, is Dennis Ford's book. And that's not a shill because he runs the program here. This is the right book about how a lot of money with families, they want to put that money to work for good and get returns. And then if you're in my line of work, life sciences, you want the biotech primer. And this is an online as well. So every couple of weeks you get a new, how do vaccines work? How is this going? And new stuff all the time. So we run the 10 programs, 60, 80 companies come through. We're there to help them get land slots like they are here at the Tech Hub, New York City, or at Resi, September 6th up in Boston. We drive traffic to where we can help them make further connections. So we do all this nonprofit stuff. We charge the entrepreneurs $40 for 20 minutes. Wow, they're just being charged. If they don't pay anything for it, it won't be worth anything. So the idea that a lot of professionals can live on $2 a minute, billable and paid, is how we arrived at that. It also takes care of the Panera Bread catering and the web lacking. So it actually works out to be a nonprofit in all its manifestations. And Angels and other sponsors that I work with listed here contribute to make it go. So we're there to help. All this no strings attached stuff has become very valuable for some companies. And so we don't teach anything from the ground up. We just borrow the expertise and off they go. And so that's helpful. Pass the torch.
So did you want to ask, did you want to give?
Oh yeah, Lindsay, can you go through these slides about the space? Here, come up and click.
Sure. Lindsay Harcum, I'm with NJEDA with our research park in North Brunswick. I sent some slides to Dan, thinking that he was going to be covering the tech hubs, not knowing he would ask me to speak, so apologies to Judith, the moderator.
That's okay.
But just want to point out here, New Jersey has 16 million square feet of life sciences space. It's a lot. We're a former, certainly a biopharma hotspot. A lot of the space is owner-occupied by the pharma community, but pharma has transitioned over time into a robust biotech entrepreneurial community. And what's represented on this slide are a number of life sciences hubs where companies can grow. A lot of step-out space where companies can grow. There are incubator space in here as well. Everything from the old Roche site, which I call at the end of the Lincoln Tunnel, is growing into 1 million square feet with Hackensack Meridian Health, along with Martin Meadow being their anchor commercial tenant. An old Sanofi site in Bridgewater is 300,000 square feet. We have a site with 300,000 square feet in North Brunswick. Princeton has another 300,000 square feet. This is all life sciences space, and it's really a great place for growing companies. Doesn't even cover here all the incubators, one of which Judith has in Newark, and we have one as well. On here also, this is our research park. Dan's asked me to move along here a little bit. Just a couple of new developments in accelerators that have happened. Celgene just opened an accelerator on their campus in Summit. Very exciting place. I'm on the advisory board there. Lots of opportunities for companies to co-locate within a shared environment and have great access to a really fantastic company. And Biolabs Princeton also recently opened as well. Biolabs, as you know, came out of Cambridge, then they grew into San Diego, Research Triangle Park, now New York City, later Philly, and they recently opened this spot here in Princeton. Another great shared accelerator open environment. And that's probably all of Dan's 5 minutes, so I'll turn this back
All right,
over.
and so now we are going to have Deborah Novak, who is the director of Bio Inc. NYC, speak.
Thank you. So I'm the director at Bio Inc. at New York Medical College, and it's an incubator based in Westchester, not far from here. It's fairly modest in size compared to some of these other 300,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet. Right now we have 6,500 square feet, and we are incubating 9 startups. We have a unit of Philips Healthcare as our anchor tenant. They're working on computational genomics. And we have a big expansion on the drawing board, hoping to start working on that in January and have it open maybe in May. It's refurbishing space, so it shouldn't take that long. I think my assignment is to tell you what kind of programs we have available for entrepreneurs. And so the main thing that, the starting point is that we're offering very affordable wet lab, dry lab, and office space. And we have 3 core facilities in the incubator, which are labs that are full of equipment that we've provided. So in addition to having very affordable rent, the startups can save additional money by not having to buy quite as much equipment because they can use a lot of the shared facilities that we're offering. And plus they have access to all the facilities on our medical campus. So we have an animal facility there. We have all kinds of fancy mass spectrometers and other equipment I don't even know the name and purpose of. We have an instrument shop if you're building a medical device and you want to, prototype it and test it out. And we've got most of the startups who are in our incubator now are doing research collaborations with faculty, gathering new data, publishing papers. And on the business side, we're offering a lot of business support. We're building a team of mentors, and we have occasional programs where we bring in people to talk about different things that entrepreneurs need to know, maybe not as detailed a curriculum as what you're doing in Entrepreneurs University, but we run programs on, how to perfect your investment pitch, which is of course very important for startups always trying to raise money. We have also a group of investors that we call the Trumata Investment Club, and so some of the startups that approach us or that are in our incubator have the opportunity to present to our sort of in-house investor group. It's not a fund, it's a little more informal than that, but it is something that, you know, is a little bit unique at BioInc. And I think the other two things I should mention is that we, since we're based in New York, it's not the same as the New Jersey programs that have been mentioned, but we are one of the regional innovation hotspots in New York State, which there are 10, which means that the state is giving us some money for operations to spur innovation we're in the Mid-Hudson region, which covers 7 counties, starting at Westchester and moving north. Rockland, Dutchess, Orange, Putnam, Ulster, Sullivan. And in addition to that, although we're not a SUNY campus, we are qualified as a Startup New York campus, so we have tax credits. So there are several tax benefits that we can offer to startups that are either located in our incubator itself or at any of the other innovation locations in that 7-county region that we might have a partnership agreement with. I think I'll stop there. I'll have more to say later.
All right, so we'll now have Eva, who is the Vice President of Biotech and Science Affairs for the SUNY Downstate Medical Center, talk.
Okay, I think there's a slide.
Oh, yes. Let's see if we can. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Eva Kramer. I am the president of 2 nonprofits, one for the Downstate Biotech Incubator and one for BioBat at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. The Downstate Biotech Incubator is for early stage companies, and BioBat at the Brooklyn Army Terminal is for more mature companies. So any companies that outgrow the incubator or any local, national, or international companies that are interested in coming to New York City and having space to expand and begin to do manufacturing. The biotech incubator is 50,000 square feet. It has modular labs and office space, a core facility room, conference rooms. We have a nursery program for smaller companies that want to share space. The companies either at the incubator or at BioBat have access to university resources, which includes working with our scientists or clinicians or even students. They can use our library. We have a terrific vivarium that has animals from mouse all the way up to non-human primates. They can use our clinical research facilities as well as do clinical trials with our clinicians. At BioBat, we have, it's a much larger facility. That whole area is 97 acres on the Brooklyn waterfront. It has its own dock with a ferry system that goes from there to Lower Manhattan. We are building that out in phases. The first phase was 38,000 square feet, and that is completely full. Phase 2 is now 85,000 square feet, and we have a number of companies moving into that space. It's a joint venture between Downstate Medical Center and the New York City EDC. There's easy access either by subway or through this ferry system to all the research institutes in the city. And this ferry system that is developing is going to help develop a technology hub that will go all along the East River. So you could go from BioBat to Alexandria to Roosevelt Island, and it's 15 minutes from BioBat, for instance, to Wall Street. Both sites have entrepreneurship programs and workforce programs. The entrepreneurship program is run by Mary Howard. Some of you may know her.
Yeah.
She runs the eLab program in the city, and she runs our Next Milestone program. Special program, each of our companies are given the ability to have a mentor who will help them during the year reach a certain milestone. In addition, we have special workshops and we have networking sessions. Our workforce programs run from programs for, actually we call them workforce, but they're for little children, all the way up to graduate students. So we have programs, STEM programs that we are very involved with. With Hunter College, we have a bioscience technician program, and with Downstate, our PhD students have the ability to get their PhD with a company, and it can be PhD students or MD PhDs. Both sites are part of Startup New York, and I think certainly it was alluded to, but for those people who may not be that knowledgeable about it, it is a fantastic program, actually, and the companies do not have to pay corporate taxes for 10 years, and the people who work at the companies do not pay city and state employment taxes. So it turns out to be a terrific incentive for people to come.
Great, and then we have Noelle Goddard, who's principal with the Accelerate New York Seed Fund.
Hi, it's nice to be able to speak as a tech hub when we are technically a fund, but it is simpatico with everyone else who's sitting at the table here today because it turns out these companies also need money in order to be able to commercialize what they're doing. So I have a few general interest slides because I thought it was kind of important to point out what's happening in downstate New York right now, which is one of the newer ecosystems. So this slide highlights, again, it's a few years old in terms of the metrics, but it highlights the amount of inventions and research dollars which come into the downstate New York region, which is rather massive from the institutions which are represented there. And the institutions for downstate New York are those which are located in Long Island, New York City, and the 7 counties which Deborah alluded to earlier of the Mid-Hudson. So as you can see, they're turning out a tremendous amount of inventions, but not necessarily capitalizing those into companies. So this next slide shows a number of accelerator and incubator programs, some of which are represented by our panelists here, which are trying to help with that problem. It was identified in a partnership fund for New York study that was compiled a few years ago, that there were 5 different aspects of the New York ecosystem that were preventative for New York to be able to become a strong biotech ecosystem. One was space, and I do think it's a really serious concern, as we all know, because for quite some time there were not these open incubator spaces where people could, in a co-working environment, not shell out the funding that's necessary in order to build out lab space, but instead share lab space in a capital efficient manner and be able to get the company rolling from day one in flexible lease terms, et cetera. And so just to highlight a few of the things which are there, of course, you just heard about SUNY Downstate and their BioBat expansion space. BioInc, obviously, also you just heard about. Harlem Biospace, which is listed up at the top right-hand corner of the slide, is another one of the earlier incubators that was funded near Columbia by the New York EDC program. So certainly the New York City EDC has been serious about trying to support the build-out and growth of these incubators in the city, understanding the problem of the lack of lab space. They've also contributed to biolabs at NYU Langone, which is an extension of the Cambridge biolabs that we heard earlier on the previous slides. The state is also involved in trying to fund some of these incubators, so they actually solicited is maybe not the exact correct phrase, but they supported the moving of JLabs into New York City, which again is, for those of you who have actually seen the new space, it's in Western Soho or the Hudson Square area, actually quite close to Biolabs New York. And then all of the other incubators which are in accelerator programs which are listed below, some of them are located at universities. So Cornell has a bench to bedside program, but they don't happen to have space currently for spin-outs. There's some Long Island entities there. The Long Island High Tech Incubator has actually been open for a number of years, which is near Stony Brook Hospital, and has spun out a number of interesting companies. And on the right-hand side, you see the Long Island Biosciences Hub. That's a formal mentoring program which couples with that. And then some other entities. So one of the newest is on the bottom left-hand corner. That's Cornell Tech, which is on Roosevelt Island, which is the combination of Cornell and the Technion. So they are a bioscience-specific incubator, but they do have some life science companies which are there. All their companies are computational-based. Okay, so this is a slide from the Partnership Fund report. You can find this free online, but this is just basically trying to highlight why it is that seed funding is important. So as I mentioned, New York City is spinning out plenty of inventions and has a tremendous amount of research dollars. So what you're seeing on the top bar graph is the ratio of private venture capital dollars to public NIH funding dollars. And it turns out that our area is equivalent more or less to the Cambridge area, Cambridge-Boston area, in amount of NIH research dollars. But the amount of private investment is very low, and what you can see here is that there's like a $1.12 ratio for the Cambridge-Boston area, where there was only something like 6 cents at the time of this report of private dollars invested into our companies that would spin out from normal NIH research. So that's obviously a call to action for trying to develop seed funds who would be able to help in commercializing and spinning out companies from academic institutions into the seed space, which was formerly missing in New York. I think it's a better landscape now because many of these incubators also carry with them some amount of seed funding. In our case, we are purely a seed fund, and we grew out of a previous fund called Accelerate Long Island. So Accelerate Long Island was a grant matching program, not an equity investment program, that was founded by the 5 research institutions of Long Island who wanted to improve their ecosystem for spinning out gun companies into their own incubators. It was a $500,000 matching grant to $500,000 of private investment, which were committed by 2 venture funds out on Long Island. It was spread into 10 companies at 100K investments. The state portion of that was a grant. So in that case, it was only $50K into each company that was actually an equity investment. But it was deployed over 3 years, and I think one of the great numbers that we have right now is that with those original investments, we've had more than $24 million of follow-on funding in the 10 companies which were initially seeded. That program, because of the way it was structured, also had a number of educational components. So there was a mentoring arm to it, as well as a networking arm to try. Long Island is quite long, literally. It's a little the New Jersey problem that 30 miles can make a big difference.
Yeah.
So to be able to actually host centralized events so that people from different institutions actually interact with each other. So the new version of the fund was an RFP by the state to have basically state money managed by an independent entity. So Accelerate Long Island is now in a limited partnership with the Empire State Development. We manage $3 million of funds, which are supposed to be again deployed over 3 years in 100K size investments. But this time it's equity investments, obviously explicitly into the company for purposes of research. We have a specific mandate for early stage companies, which is defined by our eligibility requirement of being companies that have raised less than 500K in total investment, which I think is great because it actually allows us to specifically focus on the seed space, because one of the frustrations I think of a lot of entrepreneurs in our region has been talking to people who claim to be seed investors but are talking about Series A, or at least multiple $million deals. And I think that's not where companies originally spin out and start. So there is some great need to have the 2 million and under investment space. So we've been running for 2 years. We are tech agnostic, like the first fund, so we're not bioscience specific, but we have invested in 10 companies, 8 of which have been in biotech. Several of those have been therapeutic, and of our initial investments, we're very proud to say that we've had our first follow-on with the Series A deal for one of our therapeutic companies. That was just recent. For the companies that have been raising money, the seed rounds that we've been going into have been typically between $500,000 and maybe $1.5 million in size. So we have quite a bit of private co-investment, which has now been stimulated by the state coming in with these 100K front-end deals and the diligence that we share with those funds. And we're excited because we have a number of other companies which are lined up into the pipeline, which will hopefully close in the next couple of months. And some of these incubators, we've also invested into companies that sit in these spaces, which is how it's supposed to work.
Great. Well, I have a couple of questions I'm going to ask the hubs about, and then we'll certainly open it up to comments and questions from the audience. We've heard about a lot of really fabulous programs across New York, New Jersey, and one of the questions that we sometimes get, I would get up in Newark, is people said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that you were there. I didn't know that there were these opportunities for me." And so I want to talk a little bit about how do you attract companies? How do startups, how do people who are starting up these businesses learn about your programs? What are some of the things that you can do to really get the companies to know that these are potential options that they should be considering?
if we're going in order, I'll handle that. So everybody wants money as much as they want advice. When they ask for advice, they may lead to money. If they ask for money, they're just going to get advice. And that's true in 80-20%. So what we're hoping to do, we get connected, let's see, so how do I receive deal flow? Deal flow, so I'm in the Angel Capital Association. I was a charter member back in 2003. I run an Angels and Life Science Investors Group. I run and have my own family office. So we make small and mighty investment decisions in a couple of the family missions, one of which is preventing blindness, especially with dry, age-related macular degeneration. There's a few other ones, wounded warriors and some other particular silos of interest. And then we're just hoping entrepreneurs can connect with others. So we see a tremendous flow that comes in, and we help direct it out there, and that comes back. Most of the companies, so the quick story, and I'll stop. Inc. magazine put together a list of angel investors back in 1998 when it was still the print, and I was in it. And my njangelsnet@AOL address was out there. So I every week I get 10 or 20 invitations to invest in Kazakhstan, the Congo. Somebody's uncle has gold, and it comes in like a torrent. But inside of that, there are gems, and so that's what we do. We invite them to come in. Everyone gets a free, a fair hearing, I should say, and it just spins the karma. So that's how I do it.
So how do people know about us? Well, I think it's really a key component of this notion of a tech hub. I think
Right.
if you're a silo, if you're a standalone program of any sort, it's much harder for people to know about you than if all the various forms of programming and resources are tied together and know about each other. So just as one example, I'm on the task force in Westchester County it's called the Incubator Task Force. And the whole idea there is that there are tons of resources, but they aren't all connected. And the more that the academic institutions know the incubators, and the incubators know the nonprofits that are giving mentoring advice, and know the co-working spaces, I think all of those different entities that are supporting the entrepreneurial economy in any region need to know about each other and refer people to each other and help entrepreneurs find the right resources for them at any given time. But another key way that we raise awareness about the existence of the incubator is going to events like this, certainly, knowing the other incubators around the state and around the region, because somebody may not want to come to Westchester or one of the 7 counties. They might want to go to Long Island, or they might be in Newark, but they need to leave New Jersey for some reason, or maybe they need, so I think there's a lot of
Collaborate with
cross-referring.
us.
Yeah, they can, of course they can, we have an application form on our website. We certainly have social media, all the normal ways, but I think for the most part, there's a lot of sharing of referrals and information around the ecosystem, assuming people know about the other resources.
So I think that's really an important point, and if you end up having the opportunity to go to the large Bio International Conference that's going to be taking place this year in Philadelphia, many of the states will have pavilions, and what we've done in New Jersey is that kind of the universities and the EDA kind of all together are really trying to cross-sell the region, so that, as you say, we're trying to get people to know, come to this New York, New Jersey region. It is, assuming NJ Transit is working fine, it's a pretty quick 20 minutes back and forth between the 2 states to be able to take advantage of resources. You mentioned Mary Howard. She's done programs for me in New Jersey at NJIT. We've cross-pollinated back and forth with some of the companies that were parts of some of your programs, also then participated in a couple of health informatics programs that we were running in Newark. So one of the other things I wanted to ask about was one of the topics that seems, and there was a woman who was on one of the earlier panels who was from ASTIA, is that when we think about entrepreneurs, we have sometimes a real challenge with women and underrepresented minorities, helping them get the support that they need. And any comments that anyone would like to make on the panel about any special support for women and underrepresented minorities? Eva?
Yeah, so actually, we have a number of women companies that are run by women. And we also run special programs for young women
Okay.
to stimulate them to go into STEM. And so, and that begins very young and works its way all the way up. So, to my actually surprise, there is a very significant number of women now starting their own companies.
Yeah, also.
Go ahead.
So we were very surprised that in our first 10 investments, 6 were female-owned and led companies, which we didn't specifically try to do, but we were very proud of the number. I do think there are some organizations which have specifically focused on both funding and mentoring female entrepreneurs. So Springboard comes to mind. So Springboard Enterprises runs their program, and Golden Seeds. So Golden Seeds is an angel group. Springboard is a mentoring organization which has many angels which participate in it, but don't specifically invest. But there are also numerous outreach programs in the city which are specifically trying to support this. And Mary Howard's organization also has a large number of female and minority entrepreneurs who participate in ELABs.
Yeah, there's also Women in Bio has a New York chapter, and so that's another great resource as well.
I would love to promote women in general, but I'm essentially gender neutral, and I don't see color, and it doesn't, religious affiliations don't matter to me. It's really about the capability of the entrepreneur. So I've made about 24 investments, and all of them are with guys. However, the gentlemen that are in charge tend to surround themselves with women as on the same merits as they would pick a guy. So it looks like the gender neutrality is actually effective in the marketplace. I am so glad about all the leg up and affiliation and support, and Golden Seeds came out. That was novel and wonderful, and I don't know where they are on their exits. But I think it's all a good mix, and the fact that we're empowering the other half of the population, it is going to just mean more shots on net, more people that anyone can read the book. You don't have to have some sort of masculine killer ethic to go ahead and close a sale or project over the horizon. So I think it's wonderful. Just for the record, back in the early 90s, I was the only male member of the New Jersey Association of Women Business Owners. And I was there for research. I was learning, what do they want? And it turns out women want to give and then get. And it turns out, in all my learnings, that men want to get and then give. So it's fabulous that the Venusians and the Martians have come here to Earth and do this commerce, and I'm glad we're all doing it together.
Great. So one other comment I'll make, and then we'll open it up for comments, is that New York and New Jersey are viewed as a really large market. So many of us are seeing a lot of international companies who are looking to come to the U.S. market, and they will find both New York and New Jersey as attractive places to set up their businesses. And so there will be delegations from Israel, from Europe, from Asia that are frequently led by the consulates who are trying to help their companies get access to this larger marketplace. And I know many of our incubators in New Jersey, ours in Newark, Lindsay's at CCITT have gotten special designation from the International Business Incubation Association, and I know it stands for something else now, where we've done some special work to be soft landing certified to specifically help and work with international companies. And some of the programs in New York may also have some special support for international companies as well.
So I don't have that fancy
Yeah.
certification
Yeah.
that you have, but we have given a lot of
Yeah.
thought to that idea of being a good place for international companies to land. And for the last several years, we've been traveling to Israel 3 or 4 times a year to build relationships with the incubators there and the family offices and the VCs, so that they'll know about our incubator and our whole fabulous
Ecosystems.
region. And, you know, I am in discussions actually right at the moment with 3 Israeli companies who are telling me that they're very close to being ready to move across the pond, and hopefully they will take some space in my expansion. And I recently had a visit from a delegation from China, as a
Right.
matter of fact. They were mostly government officials trying to get sort of the lay of the land of the region, to go back to their companies there and, you know, have some knowledge about good places to come.
Great. Well, I know we probably just have a few minutes left, so I'm going to open it up if anyone in the audience has any questions that they'd like to ask the panel.
Is anyone from Stevens in the house? Ed, you want to tell us a little bit about Stevens?
Certainly, thank you.
It's Dave.
Dave.
I'm David Zimmerman with Stevens Institute of Technology. I run a small incubator that incubates companies coming out of Stevens, both student and faculty-based companies that are looking to move Stevens IP forward. So happy to talk to anyone who's interested in learning more about that program.
Great. Other questions? No one's saying.
So I'm going to make an observation.
Go ahead.
So, say this is balanced as I can in the politicized environment. Entrepreneurs want money. And they want value, and they want benefit, they want commitment, they want. And it's good that they want. They're unreasonable people, and they want to change and improve so that we're all benefiting. When, you know, entrepreneurs that work with the government entity in any capacity, they tend to take advantage of, oh, I want. And it's very healthy for people and academics and incubators and the like to say, go out there in the real world and get some real feedback about someone that could, would, or should, or might invest in your company. That will help us understand how valuable you might be as a tenant here. And if you don't know, if you haven't had that feedback, you're just banging on the door because you want. It behooves you to get a really good business plan, to, you know, grow, vet it, and have it. How do you prove it? And go through all those iterations. So we find that a lot of companies actually come together and decide when something like Resi takes place. Resi takes place 4 or 5 times a year, and there's always something new to stop, freeze frame. This is where we are. This is what we want. This is what we're going to do with it. And those are very healthy processes. So it's when you have entrepreneurs in your incubators, and I think you're all doing this, have outside angel investors, if you can, to come in and give them an honest clock cleaning about their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We use the 22 criteria, the 12 show me keys of raising early stage capital, while avoiding the 10 deadly sins of raising early stage capital. And you can fix some sins, but you can always strengthen the show me keys. So healthy.
Yeah, so kind of really building off of what Dan is saying, one of the other sort of regional programs is the NSF I-Corps node that CUNY, along with Columbia and NYU are the leads on, which and many universities in New Jersey are also part of the NYSERN node, and it really does exactly what you're saying. It gets early stage academics out talking to customers to do that customer discovery work to figure out, is anybody actually interested in the technology that they have been working on, or do they need to pivot in some fashion to be able to have something that is really more likely to be able to get funded through the SBIR's TTR program, angel investors, ultimately venture capitalists. So we've worked with John Blejo and the team out of CUNY for a number of years on those programs, which again are very beneficial. So if there are no more questions, we will end this session. I'd like to thank my panelists. Greg is in the back. I think we'll be around for a few minutes. I know he's got another great session coming up in terms of marketing and how to tell your story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.